Okay, so day two, and this is what is database management system. So, so database is basically a collection of files that store data, right? So, I think a good way to think about database separate from database management system is a way to think um, about data itself distinct from the software that manages the data. So a good example I can give you is if you look at a Word document, for example, right? So a Word document is something like this. You can have a document here. This is a doc file, .docx, and this could be resume .docx. You can have another file here, and this is also a .docx file, and this could be, called, you know, uh, my dream vacation .docx. And let's add one more, right? And this is called, this is also a document, Word document, and this could be, you know, I don't know, this could be a letter .docx. Now, each one of these are independent. They were created using Microsoft Word. So you have MS Word program, right, that runs on your computer, and then this program can open this file, it can open this file, it can open this file, and so on. And you can open to do what? To read, write. Those are the two things you can do. Writing can be like editing or modifying, or it could be to create new. Right? So these are the kinds of things you can do when you open the document. So this is, but the key thing I am trying to distinguish between these two things here, which is Microsoft Word itself and then the individual files that contain Microsoft Word compatible or Microsoft Word specific data, is the fact that this by itself is your data. And you can think of this as software that manages this data, right? So now, obviously, we're talking about Oracle, not Oracle specifically. We're talking about database and database management system, but it always helps to simplify thinking about the the uh, the the system, the data, and the software distinctly. And at some point, you're going to blur the difference. But right now, I'm simply saying that because it's a standard thing that you have data distinct from the software. So in order to read, manipulate, operate on that data, you need the software. Otherwise, that data is just going to sit there, and you wouldn't be able to do anything meaningfully with it. So in the case of Microsoft Word, the software that you need to manage or to work on this data is Microsoft Word, right? And the data itself that this software is going to work on is in these documents. If you don't have these documents, then this software would have nothing to work on. It's just simply going to open up and it'll have nothing to do till you actually create a document with it. So if that is clear to you, we can move on to the next thing here, comparing this to a database and database management system, and that is as follows, right? I mean, the idea is the same. Management system, the idea is similar. You have basically data. So data data is sitting in files. So you have, I'm going to make a disk looking thing here. This is how you represent a disk on the computer. And all of these contain files, right? One or more files. Now, the files for a relational database are not in, okay, so these files I would call data files, right? These are not your docx files that are that work with Microsoft Word. These files are specific, just like with Microsoft Word. You have files that can be opened with Microsoft Word software. Here you have files that can be opened with database management system software. So these are not your Microsoft Word docx files. These are your database management system. So you have here DBMS, right? Example, Oracle, right? Oracle is a database management system. The files that, so this is going to operate on these files. The files over here are for Oracle. You have files that have a basically a .dbf extension, right? So they could be like hundreds of files. These could be literally hundreds and hundreds of files, and they all have a .dbf extension. And this Oracle DBMS software is what you use to then operate on these files. So you can open, you can read, you can write, etc. Right? So that's what you need. So if you don't have this DBMS software, right? So this is the software. If you don't have this software, you can't really work on these files. So you need the software. Now, there's one critical difference between the rather simplistic example of Microsoft Word that I gave you and this software reading, like a DBMS software that's reading files that contain data from the disk. That so the critical difference is, and actually I'll come to the critical difference in 1 second. Just for terminology, this whole thing here, the set of files that contain your data, is actually called the database. Okay, it's called the database. The database is actually the collection of files that hold the data that DBMS is going to operate on. So DBMS is software that manages the database. Okay, and then the database is a set of files that contain data that will be managed or operated upon by the DBMS. Now, it doesn't matter which DBMS technology you're using, whether you're using Oracle or SQL Server or MySQL, DB2, whatever, right? It's this fundamental concept is the same, that you have DBMS, which is the software that manages the database files or the data inside the database files. The database files, the collection of database files themselves is what the database is. Now, at some point, you're going to call this whole thing a database. You're going to just say, oh, you're not going to, when you talk like in loose terms, you're going to say, well, I'm connecting to the database, right? The database in that case is obviously it's right here. This is your database. Well, you're not connecting to the database, as in you're not connecting and reading these files directly. you have to connect to the database management system software. And this is the critical difference with Microsoft Word that I was talking about. And that difference being Microsoft Word is a single user system, meaning I have Microsoft Word running on my desktop, and I am going to open this Microsoft Word, launch user launches MS Word on their desktop or laptop computer, right? And then this Microsoft Word is going to read all the Word documents. You can open whichever Word document you want to work on. Now, here we're talking things with the DBMS at a much larger scale. So user is sitting, this is the laptop right here, right? This is the user's laptop. User is going to run a program on their laptop, some kind of a SQL client program, SQL client. Now, there are many SQL client software out there, right? You could use even Excel, for example, is a SQL client, right? You can use Microsoft Excel, and then you can connect to a database. But when I say this SQL client is going to then connect to the database, so SQL client connect to database. But the database is right here, right? This is the database. So is the SQL client connecting to this? The answer is no, not directly. The SQL client is connecting to the database management software. So this software is the only thing that will talk to the database. You or any number of SQL clients that are out there, right? These are all different SQL clients. They can all connect to this software, and this software running in the cloud is going to connect to the database that is also in the cloud, right? So that is the separation here between user and this is the cloud, right? That's the difference. So any number of SQL clients can connect to the database management system software, and that software in turn will connect to the database, and you can then send commands to the software. The software can then process those commands and then do whatever it needs to do with the data files, i.e. the database, to return or to perform whatever operations you need to do. Okay, so hope that makes sense.